I think, I go to church anyway, but basically I don't believe in God.
Yep.
Bit of a contradiction there. So
A little bit.
Because I think there's a need to emulate those conditions that we flourished in as earlier hominids, and I think that's what religion has always done.
But human beings flourished in environments of conflict.
Right. I mean, we did.
You're an element of chaos.
I don't think so.
You're an agent of chaos.
No.
Why not?
Because it's only something that actually threatens you.
You do threaten the church. You're an atheist that goes to church. So now let's take it a step deeper, which is assuming that you're a man of goodwill, which it sounds like you are, and that you recognise that which is good should be upheld and that which is bad should be resisted, right? How can we do that without embracing our Christian faith?
Okay, so I think there's definitely a need to, like, all of the processes, I'd say, of traditional Christianity and Judaism, I think, are absolutely vital.
Yep.
And they're all about, so say for the children, that they grow up within a local community that actually looks after them and looks after the father and the mother as the husband and wife. And that you have monogamy as well. And you have marriage between one man and one woman.
Amen.
And
are you a Christian, bro?
I'm not. No.
Let me ask you this question.
But I believe all of these processes,
really?
scientifically, they all work.
Do you believe that all of this is good for everybody else?
What?
Everything you've just described, it's good for everybody else.
It's good for everyone.
So is it good for you?
Yes.
So can you not
do it when Muhammad Hijab is here? When when there's a crowd of Muslims, that's what you want to do.
Can you not embrace them for yourself then, as a Christian?
There's just minimal.
I think I go to church anyway. But basically I don't believe in God. Bit of a contradiction there. So
a little bit.
But I think that it's just the processes that are absolutely vital. And I think you can't get rid of those processes, because if you do, then the whole thing fails, and it just you get the atomization of everyone, and so I think that's
the thing is
thing.
it is precisely because of our belief in God, and in the kind of the God that we believe in, that these values make sense.
I think logically they work as well.
That was the whole idea of the Enlightenment. We can get to these values through rationalism. That was the whole project of the Enlightenment. And what you're doing is, as an individual, you've accepted that the Enlightenment has failed. But you're still on the Enlightenment path. You're still trying to get to the values through logic. You're gonna fail.
I don't think so.
Well, the Enlightenment already has failed collectively, trying to do exactly that.
I'd say the reason it has is because so the underlying ethos of that society is you can do whatever you want. Whereas the underlying ethos of a traditional society is that basically, you need to stick to the structure, and then the structure actually works for the benefit of everyone.
But the society that came to the conclusion you can do whatever you want, didn't start there. It started with this idea that we believe in the family structure is important. We believe that Christian values are good, but we don't believe in God.
Right.
And then they ended up with do whatever you want, so long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. Right? That's the path you're on. You're just further back. That our morality is based upon the idea that God exists, and morality needs to reflect the ontology of God, the nature of God. So because God is just, we must be just. Because God is merciful, we must be merciful. Because God is love, we must be love. Because God is truth, we must value truth. Because God is a trinity, we can have a family. It's kind of like the idea that you can have our morality without our belief in God. Like, you can make it work as an individual if you just have this cognitive dissonance. But the reality is society wasn't able to sustain that narrative. right? And you're making it work for you as an individual, but you're doing it through cognitive dissonance. Your beliefs and your values are not in line with one another. Because if you're saying that God doesn't exist, then what you're saying is that there is no cause behind this creation. That at base, this world is just a product of a random chance, and that we are just animals with no greater purpose or calling. And so in that cosmos, you are actually free to do whatever you want.
I would say that, so there's the question, do you want your society to have a future? So, I mean, for me, that's a pretty important question.
Yep.
And there's the other one, which is that the recognition that the first ever human civilization was a product of absolute goodness, and that the continuation of human civilization is also a product of absolute goodness as well.
But goodness, what that language of goodness makes no sense unless you believe in something called good.
So it's all of the processes that lead to the continuation and the flourishing of human society.
But how do we measure flourishing?
So it's working.
The thing is, just because something works, that it survives from one year to the next, doesn't mean that it's a society worth keeping alive.
Right.
The caliphates worked for 1400 years.
Yeah.
But if I had the power, I would destroy every caliphate everywhere at all times.
Okay.
Because caliphates are pure evil institutions.
Chris, you and me double team, we debate.
It's similar with communism. Communism. Well, I mean, actually, communism is an example of a system that genuinely doesn't work. So
it leads to a lot of people starving.
It genuinely doesn't work.
Right.
But you're making value judgments. You're using words. You're using ideas like good and bad, and you're using ideas like the family.
I think one is like goodness is related to order, isn't it? Whereas evil is related to
goodness, according to who?
So goodness is basically your guide on the path to order.
But what
whereas
is goodness?
Evil is your guide on the path to chaos.
Goodness? What defines goodness?
So it's a spirit that leads to order.
A spirit, an attitude that leads to order.
A spirit you embody that leads to the establishment of order.
Of order and structure. But what makes order and structure good?
It's because it's a system that works and helps people flourish in their own lives.
But there's many dictatorships that are very structured. Are they good?
No.
Right, why not? They're structured.
Well, they don't, work for the flourishing of everyone.
But how do you define?
But
how do you define what's flourishing?
So it basically is a system that works for the benefit of everyone who exists within that system.
What's defining the benefit of everyone?
Yes, so basically that they lead a good life.
You're just shuffling, bro.
They lead a good life, and engage in the path of life as well.
Listen. You're literally just using words and you're just shuffling around. You're not answering the question.
Right.
You're just shuffling from, good is flourishing. Well, what's flourishing? Flourishing is good. Well, what's good? Good is flourishing. What's flourishing? Flourishing is good. Because you can only have good societies when you have good people.
Yeah.
But we've got into the West, into this trap of thinking that if you can create good structures that people pass through, orderly structures, that people will be able to somehow discover themselves, and in the process of that self-discovery, they'll naturally become good.
Right.
And time again, we see that doesn't work.
I think there's a philosophical element to it as well.
Right, now that we've established, good, now we've taken a step forward. We've established that our sense of good has to be rooted in something deeper than the material. Brilliant. So let's ask the question again, and this time I want you to remember you said it's more philosophical. How do we define what is good?
I believe it's what leads to order.
So now we're back to this circle again. We just got out of this. We've just said it's got to be something difficult. Let me give you my answer and see if it'll spark some thoughts.
Go for it.
How we define that which is good is by defining that which most closely represents God. Because God is good. So his ontology is good. There is an objective idea of what is good, and that is God. And insofar as our individuality and our social structures reflect that goodness, they are good. Bro, your mythos is inconsistent. Because what you're trying to say is, I want to see the champion, I want to see the dominance, I want to see the conquering. But I don't want the killing that comes with that.
The dominant species on this planet.
But why can't we kill one another to do that?
It's a bad idea when we turn that philosophy to each other.
No.
It's not such a bad idea when we decide that we need to
billions of human beings.
Take on the lions. It's not such a bad idea then.
Bro, I wish you would address my question. Why can't I kill you if you are inconvenient to me being the champion?
Because that system leads to chaos.
No, I will win, so therefore there will be order.
It doesn't work out that way.
But it does.
In the long term, it doesn't work out that way.
Human history is replete with examples where order has been established at the edge of the sword. So what's wrong with killing?
I don't think it works. I think what you see is the implosion of particular societies in violence.
And the Roman Empire was one of the most violent societies in history, and it did well for over 2,000 years.
It didn't do well for that long.
I'm afraid you don't know history. The Roman Empire lasted from I think it was 600 years BC or 400 years BC through to 1453.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd say about 400 AD it fell quite significantly.
Only in the West?
Yeah.
In the West, it continued in the East.
Okay, right.
So you don't know your history, bro.
I mean, I know some of it. I don't know all of it.
My point to you is, you're carrying out what C.S. Lewis described as historicism, which is that you're trying to say that we can establish an overarching narrative of history, based upon the little glimpse, the little tiny spectrum of history that we have access to.
Yeah.
And then from that tiny spectrum, we're able to draw out what is the grand historical narrative that will guide us in how we live our life. It is foolhardy as Hegelianism, it's as foolhardy as Marxism. They all participated in the same nonsensical ideas, and that's what you're doing. You're just got a different story. Your story is, rather than one of economy as Marx was, yours is more of a Nietzschean one, and the idea of the emergence of the champion establishing order in the chaos.
No, I'm saying that we needed, like in our past, to become the dominant species on this planet. Otherwise, we wouldn't be. We'd still be, in the rainforest, on the savannah, and we'd still be under the thumb of the lions there.
Yeah, so
we needed to become dominant.
It's a Darwinian one. It's a Darwinian narrative.
That's our history.
Right, but your narrative of history, firstly, is missing huge amounts. And ultimately, if you are consistent to the values that emerge from that story...
I'm saying it's all about the processes,
but
basically.
If you're consistent...
I think, it's like if we get back to traditionalism, it's about those processes. It's about monogamy, it's about marriage.
No,
it's about, the preservation of the
monogamy,
local
you've
community.
got this is my criticism of your argument, bro, and my criticism of your entire position. Is firstly, it's based on historicism. Secondly, you've got massive amounts of cognitive dissonance that you just can't see.
I don't think so. It's
like 1 second.
So the whole ideology of traditionalism is about the preservation of the path of life.
Let me try to explain another example. Let me give an example of the cognitive dissonance.
My problem is, say, if
you haven't heard my criticism.
Who doesn't promote traditionalism, they're equally likely to become a liberal, and they're equally likely not to continue their society.
My criticism is that you're trying to say things. Your narrative...
And you do have liberal churches.
Your narrative does not justify monogamy. Your narrative doesn't justify the fact that I shouldn't be able to kill you. Your narrative doesn't justify... No, it doesn't.
Because it's just not one narrative. I use more than one word. I can't just relate everything to God. I have to be a bit more nuanced in the arguments I'm making.
That's also a very simplistic view of Christianity. But this is why, bro, your kind of conservatism is a dead, floating dirt.
I don't think so. I think it's there's a need to actually get
you
back
can't get to monogamy from your
traditionalism.
Narrative. Why?
But the problem is, like I'm not sure you're seeing this correctly, but So you've got a lot of liberal churches today.
Yes.
And you have a lot of promotion of the idea that it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be whatever, live life however you want, and then you're going down exactly the same path. So I'm saying it's about the processes.
Because
you need to follow the processes.
I agree that the way that the church community the only way that the church community can transmit its values is if it has the kinds of institutions that permit the transmission of those values. But my criticism, and in that point, we're both agreed. The process of transmission is very important. How do you create a community that transmits a certain set of values? But what I'm saying to you is an essential part of that process of transmission is to anchor those values in a self-sustaining narrative.
Right.
And the narrative that you are trying to maintain is in total cognitive dissonance to the values you're trying to uphold. That's my criticism of you.
I'm trying,
you're right in what you're
to
saying.
maintain it in a logical narrative.
But you're failing,
You're putting it into the older religious narrative.
Yeah, but you're failing.
I don't think it's a failure.
Because let me try to.
I believe the problem is that there's a lot of arrogance, or there was, in the Atheist and Enlightenment movements, that you can just get rid of all of the structure of Christianity and somehow things will work.
Right, but let's look at a concrete example. The example of the family.
Yeah.
Right? I believe in the family, and the definition of the family has been a man and a woman. Married, with their children and their extended bloodlines. And I believe it because that is what is described in this book. Now, without appealing to this book, just based on your narrative of the emergent champion, the Darwinian survival narrative, how can you justify a man and woman monogamous family as opposed to the fact that we can have families connected to the ideas of polygamy?
So scientifically, I can do this.
Go on.
And so it's based on our development as early hominids. Generally, we did pair bond. We've always done this as a species, and we've always had the children growing up under the care of the parents. And so this happens within a wider tribe of around 150 members, which is also the average size of the church community.
Right, now let
what the church has done, what all religions have done, is they have emulated the conditions that we developed as earlier hominids.
You got it wrong again. Because if you look in history, what you realise is that the rich and the powerful always had concubines.
We didn't have money for most of our development.
Right, so
we were hunter-gatherers.
But my point is, from your narrative, now that most of us are rich enough that we can maybe sustain having more than one wife, why not?
Because I think there's a need to emulate those conditions that we flourished in as earlier hominids. And I think that's what religion has always done.
But human beings flourished in environments of conflict.
Right. I mean, we did, but
So why can't we replicate those conditions? Because you just said we've got to replicate the conditions.
You try to establish. This is the Jordan Peterson arguments, that you basically you're trying to establish order within, and there's the whole world around you, which is chaos. And the world doesn't care about you, and it doesn't care about humanity. And so there's a need to actually create a bulwark against that.
Do you know what Jordan Peterson is doing though? He's taking the philosophy of Nietzsche, and he's taking biblical archetypes, and he's pushing them through a filter of psychology, particularly Jungian psychology. That is the exercise of Jordan Peterson, and it is something that I have a lot of sympathy for, and I have a lot of time for. But I'm trying to point out to you. That your narrative, here's the rubrics of the narrative I've picked up from you so far. 1, we should imitate the conditions of early hominids because those hominids flourished. 2, that the structures are...
obviously we build a more elaborate system than they do, but we have to stick to those structures.
Structures are important to transmit values. and that the narrative is the idea of the champion emerging, or the species emerging, from a sort of survival of the fittest to the idea of the champion establishing order over chaos. Yeah. These are the rubrics of your narrative. But this is where I'm accusing you.
I wouldn't say it's survival of the fittest. I'd say it's dominion of humanity over the planet,
which is Darwinian. So
but it's not survival of the fittest humans, because we are a small collective species. So we have always, we're not individualists. We've always functioned and flourished as a small collective.
Yeah.
Not just on our own.
Here's what I'm accusing you of.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance.
I know.
Because your values,
you mentioned this
your values of monogamy, your values of don't kill me, your values of, because that wouldn't be good. Your values of one assumes that you believe that we should be honest.
Yes.
Yeah. None of these are rooted in the rubrics of your narrative. They are Christian values that are rooted in a Christian understanding of morality and virtue. Those,
I think there's useful useful mythological archetypes.
Those virtues are based upon our vision of God. Without that vision of God, there's nothing to say that we should be radically committed to truth. There's nothing to say that we should be radically committed to chastity. There's nothing to say that we should even have a concept of justice, nor to define what justice is.
Okay, so
we get all of that from the Bible and our vision
of
God.
I think it never ends.
You're an element of chaos.
I don't think so.
You're an agent of chaos.
No.
Why not?
Because it's only something that actually threatens you.
You do threaten the church. You're an atheist that goes to church. You want the church not to believe in God. You're an agent of chaos.
I don't see other people as an agent of chaos who need to be defeated.
I see you as an agent of chaos. From your narrative, what should I do to you? From your narrative, not mine. What should I do to you from your narrative? Because I see you as an agent of chaos.
That's disingenuous, because I don't see you as an agent of chaos.
No. It's not disingenuous. No, I'm not being disingenuous.
I don't see you as an agent of chaos.
I see you as an agent of chaos. According to your narrative, what should I do to you?
Right. So that's obviously that takes you down a dark path.
What should I do to you according to your narrative?
Oh well, you have to defeat the narrative or the person.
Yeah.
I appreciate you think that. I think it's the preservation of order. That's the highest ideal.
Back to the dictatorship. Anyway, agent of chaos.
There we are. Cheers, mate.
Thankfully, I follow a Christian narrative.
Right.
Which means that even though I do see you as an agent of chaos, I would not seek to oppress you and to dominate you and to crush you to establish order.